Hey guys, welcome to my channel. It's Carly Hill here. And today it's story time. I'm going to tell you all about how I started a nonprofit and all the mistakes I made along the way. Stay tuned. So it all started when I went to college. So I'm from a city called East Cleveland, Ohio. It's a small city um, in the greater Cleveland area. And the city, it was the home of John D. Rockefeller and lots of millionaires. We have what's called Millionaires Row there in East Cleveland. So it was a very wealthy city at one point in time, but then it eventually became the opposite for reasons we're not going to talk about today. But when I was growing up there, it was definitely, stricken with a lot of issues like poverty, drugs, all these things. So my high school that I went to, predominantly black. It was an awesome school. I liked it. I thought it was great. I had a great experience there. But I was definitely an outlier there in terms of my academic performance, in terms of just my involvement in a lot of things. So I stood out. So I ended up graduating. I was valedictorian in my class, and I ended up going to Howard University, right? So let me input this, right? I am the type of person that when I learn something or if I have an experience, I'm the type that is going to share that with the next person as much as I can because I want to help people. I'm just naturally a teacher, a helper, a mentor, a coach. So I always wanted to do that. So when I had that experience going from East Cleveland to Howard University in Washington, D.C., where I was amongst the best of the best, right? I was amongst all these people who felt like they were smarter than me. They were more connected than I was. Their families had more money, all these things. So it was like a culture shock. It was a HBCU, but it was definitely a culture shock still for me because I wasn't used to being around other African American people who were that amazing. You know what I mean? So I was used to it being a clear separation between the smart people and the people who didn't apply themselves. I won't say that they're not smart, but people who didn't apply themselves. And so there it was like, nah, everybody was on that level. So that was the first thing. So I said, there are going to be other students who follow behind me at my high school who have no idea that this sort of experience exists. So that was where my first desire to start something came from. When I was sitting on the campus of Howard University, it was a cold night. I was in the iLab. If you went to Howard, you know what I'm talking about. I was in the iLab studying chemistry or working on chemistry homework or something like that. And I was like, yeah, I gotta help these kids. So what I did was when I would go home for breaks and all my friends were home for breaks and stuff, I brought them together and I said, we need to start something where we're helping these kids. But because we were all away, so most of my other friends went to school in state, but a couple of us were out of state. So it was kind of hard to run something from a distance. So that's the first thing. Making sure that where you want to start an organization is where you have access. Now I think it's a little different because of COVID-19 and we're able to do so many things virtually. So I think if we were in this situation back then, it would have been a different conversation. But when we started, everything was still in person. So it was hard to try to start something up at that point. So I had to wait until I graduated and went back to Cleveland to get the organization started. So that's the first thing. So the whole idea behind the organization that I founded was just to literally go back and mentor students. And my whole objective for the organization was not to push people to college, not to push people in any specific direction, but to make sure that our students had a plan. I felt like at our high school, we lacked exposure, or a lot of the students there lacked exposure. Some of us, because we were really involved with a lot, we had a little different of an experience. So we saw a little bit more, but still we didn't see nearly as much as we needed to in order to make adequate decisions about our futures. So I wanted to do that. And so I went back and we formed the organization, and it actually was amazing. So I did not do everything the right way, because I also am the type of person, when something is on my heart, or I really want to do something, I kind of just do it. I don't spend a lot of time doing research, or I don't spend a lot of time planning. I just say, okay, I'm gonna learn along the way. I'm gonna make mistakes. The mistakes I do make, I'll fix them. You know what I mean? So I'm just that type of worker. So as I entered into the nonprofit space, I learned that is not how you should be with this type of situation, because you have so much at stake by starting a nonprofit organization. You have to realize that when you start something like this, you're actually just creating it to solve a problem. And if you aren't doing things in the most effective way, and in a way that's going to reach the population that you aim to serve through your mission, then it's not going to really work. So you might touch some people. So I will say that through our organization, we touched a lot of students. We had awesome programs and awesome events. The first mistake I made was not making sure I had a team that was willing to actually put the work in. So for this organization, I wound up doing a lot of the actual busy work of formation and everything by myself. I had some people who were helpful along the way. So like my brother Art, he always was there. My friend Russell was always there to help. And then a few other folks along the way. So my friend Heather was there for the most part. So we just kind of made it work with a few hands. Eventually I did bring on a board. I recruited some people who I thought were really good folks to be on the board, and they were willing to help. But me as a leader, I didn't properly position them to do their jobs well, because I just kind of had I was just so used to doing everything myself that I didn't properly utilize my board. So that's a big thing that I learned along the way. Making sure that you actually let your board be your board and train them and make sure they understand exactly what's going on, because I think that whole initiative really could have been bigger than what it was. It was relatively big because we did some awesome events. So for instance, every week we would meet with the children at the high school, and it was awesome. It did what I needed it to do. But the reach wasn't there because I didn't properly figure out what I needed in order to make sure that we would have a lot of kids consistently. So for instance, all the people who helped had jobs. So we were all working. So the kids get out of school at 3 o'clock, but we don't get off of work until closer to 5 o'clock. So we're having our meetings later. So it's like, how do you keep kids after school that long? So that impacted our numbers. Even though we did have a pretty consistent group, we had to think about things like that. And if we had planned ahead of time for that, we could have made different arrangements. And so it was a lot of trial and error that went into this organization. But in the summertime, we did have awesome conferences. So that was good. We were able to get students there like on a field trip. So those always went very well. So I wouldn't say we messed up with that. But I think generally though, we didn't do our part to plan thoroughly enough. All right. The next thing I would say we could have done better, we didn't put models in place to take us to scale, meaning I couldn't hire somebody full time based on what we were bringing in. So that's a problem too. note that I also was working in a nonprofit, and it was a health center. So I saw another side of nonprofits as well while I'm building up this grassroots organization. I saw a budget of about $16 million. I saw all these things, a whole functional, to some people might say it was dysfunctional, but that's another conversation. But I saw a whole organization that was big and that had all these other things going on. So it taught me kind of how well systems can work and what nonprofits can become if you establish clear revenue streams and diverse revenue streams. So for instance, in the health center, we had a solid fee-for-service revenue stream that, you know, if we never got a private foundation grant, again, a day in our lives, we would still be able to operate. Maybe not with as many staff members, but it would still be a functional organization. So that taught me that. It taught me how federal grants work, because we were a federally qualified health center, so we had several federal grants. Taught me about the general private foundation landscape and how they kind of move and how interesting that is politically. Taught me about large fundraising events, so having to plan those annual events taught me a lot. Taught me a whole lot about people, how to work with different types of people, how to establish systems and create systems where they didn't exist, and setting goals and all of those things. It just taught me a whole lot. So I'm using that information to inform the nonprofit that I started. And then also I was in school. So remember, I like to learn and I like to teach. So while I'm running the nonprofit that I started, working in the nonprofit that I worked for, I was also going to school. I went to school twice after undergrad to get degrees. So one was in community health promotion. So I'm learning about the program planning aspect of health education and implementing community-based health initiatives and all those things, grant writing, all these types of things through that program. And then when I entered into the nonprofit organizations program, I was just learning all the ins and outs about nonprofits. So it was really interesting because I was able to take the things that I was learning from running the nonprofit that I started, from working in the nonprofit that I worked in, and just learning just formally how these things work. Because I don't know about you, but I learn a little better once I've touched it. So it's kind of like when the teacher tells you to read before you come to class, even if it goes over your head, at least you've seen the information before. So therefore, when they're talking about it, you can apply it differently and it starts to click differently, as opposed to you just going in blind and never have seen any of it before. So that's kind of how the program was for me, because I had seen so much from the small startup nonprofit end all the way to the fully established nonprofit end. So it was amazing. And so from there, people, because I talked about nonprofits a lot and they knew I was studying nonprofits, people always just asked me to help them with their nonprofit. And so that's how I ended up turning it into a business. I said, okay, although I'm not a for-profit business girl at all, I don't get it. I get it. I'm not going to say I don't get it. I fully get it, but it's not my preference. I love nonprofits. So this is interesting for me, but I decided to do that because it's just a way to take my passion and translate that into something that can make a way for me, you know, because God says your gifts will make room for you. And so it's my gift to talk about nonprofits. I love it. I love nonprofits. It's my gift to teach. And so putting it all together, why not let it make room for me? So that's why I decided to start my business. So I started the business actually first in Cleveland. It was called Cleveland Impact Institute. But when I moved to New Orleans, I had to come up with something that was more universal. So now that's how we got to Essential Impact. And I just keep learning. I'm a nonprofit nerd, and I just want to make sure that you guys don't make the mistakes that I made. It's not worth it. I think if you do it right from the beginning, you have me, use me, let me help you and walk you through this, and it's not too hard. It's gonna be fine, right? But if you do it right from the beginning, the potential of nonprofits to me is fascinating. Just the fact that if done right, you literally could change a whole thing. You could change something in society completely. You could fix a problem. But when we have people who start nonprofits just because, you know, they want to just be seen, or I'm the owner of this nonprofits don't have owners. You know what I mean? You're creating these causes for something bigger than you. And if you set it up that way and apply certain principles, it's like, you know, you're bound to succeed. Enough organizations have made the mistakes before you so that you don't have to make them as you're getting started. So that's why I started my business. That's some of the nonprofit mistakes I made. I hope that this helps somebody. I really don't like to do videos like this because I think they're too long, but it's okay. If this helped you, let me know, and I'll keep sharing more stories and more insight about me and my nonprofit journey, and I'll keep it going. All right. So if you like this and it was helpful to you, please click like or subscribe, put a comment in the comment thing, whatever you have to do, and I'm gonna keep it coming. All right, thank you for tuning in. If you watched it this long, I appreciate you. Also, don't forget to check out Essential Impact online. That's where all of my services are listed, www.essentialimpact.co. You can also follow me on Instagram and Facebook. Always there. So I want to, and above all else, I want to make sure that you, as someone who's interested in nonprofits, understands exactly what you can do in order to avoid pitfalls, in order to avoid different situations that come about. All right, so make sure you follow me, stay in touch, let's stay connected, and we'll go from there. All right, see y'all soon. Take care.